Hi, everyone. This is Mystic Temple Podcast with your hosts, Andrea Dombecki and Joanna Wiley from mystictemple.co. We're excited to be here today, and we will be talking about the Mystic Rose. Welcome, Joanna.
Hi, Andrea. Nice to be with you today in our Mystic Temple.
Definitely. And we're going to start doing some regular podcasts with everybody. Joanna and I have a healing school called mystictemple.co. We have some great classes and fun events that we love to do. And you can follow us on Facebook. And we're going to start doing some more podcasts. So today we are talking about the Mystic Rose. And I think it's a great thing to do in late June, which is when the roses bloom in a lot of places. I'm here in the Midwest. She's in the Pacific Northwest. And both of us make flower essences, and both of us are fascinated by the healing energies, the consciousness, the spirit of roses. So we thought it was a real great healing, juicy topic that we can talk about today, the healing power of the roses. So if you want to maybe touch your heart, and we're just going to start to get in that vibe of inviting rose medicine in, the synchronicity, the messages, and that could be an imagery, art in the garden, how the symbol of the rose would like to interact with your spirit, inspire you. Maybe it's followed you throughout your life. Maybe it has to do with color medicine, flower medicine. We're just kind of inviting that spirit of the rose in, the spirit of the mystic rose, and how it would like to work with us. And I always work with roses more in the summer. I love to make rose water. I love to grow roses, meditate with the roses. And I also lived in the Pacific Northwest for about 15 years. And that's like the rose capital, where I would see these amazing roses. And Portland has this huge like rose test garden that I used to go visit. And I've always felt, especially in my adulthood, that the spirit of the rose was calling me. And I would start to like draw rose fairies, rose goddesses, make flower essences with the roses. And Joanna, how about you? When did the rose start to call you?
I come from a rose family, so my grandmother had roses all over her land. They had a little like 4-acre farm, and it was orchard country in Canada, and so they had orchard trees. There's a walnut tree as well, and then we'd always have like raspberries and other fruits and vegetables that they lived off the land. But my grandma always had roses all the way around her house. There was roses everywhere, all different kinds of roses. I don't remember any other flowers except for roses. And I remember every single thing we ever bought her was rose. She had I remember buying her earrings. I think my mom bought them for us to say that we bought them for her, but they were little roses, little green metal roses. And when she passed away, my mom sent me those earrings. So I have some of her jewelry. It's nothing fancy, but it's just meaningful, And I remember buying her scarves. She always wore scarves with roses on them. All of her teacups had roses on them. Every single thing was roses. So when I think about roses, I think about the grandmother, like a grandmother medicine, and a rose grandmother as well as woven through. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that you grew up with it, because I feel like I've always drew roses, like especially before I moved out west to the Pacific Northwest. I always was like a rose artist. Like when I was little, I would watercolor roses. I was always wanting roses on my clothes. I would have rose perfume, and I was always just like so drawn to the shape of it and the color and the smell. And then when I moved to Portland, I remember being so like fulfilled by like the giant rose gardens everywhere. Like I couldn't get enough of all the beautiful rose medicine, and then getting attuned more to making the flower essences and working with the different like divas and rose fairies, and also the amazing connection that I see with Mother Mary a lot. As an artist, I always like kind of get visions, and I'd always see Mary emerging with all the pink roses and the rose fairies and the unicorns. And that's like an image that would follow me. And then just kind of discovering that the rose is a trans-dimensional flower. It's like a very high frequency. And so that means it can be like in heaven and earth at the same time in these different places. It's like trans-dimensional, but it does transport us, I feel, then to that higher dimension because it's in all of the dimensions. And I always kind of feel that like when you go into a rose garden or you connect with that you're instantly like uplifted, your vibration's higher. And it's interesting to see the studies behind that, how it's like vibrates at a very high frequency.
You know what that reminded me of? The book when I was a little kid was The Secret Garden.
Oh, I love that. I love it.
That was my favorite book. I wanted to be in a secret garden. I loved anything with gardens. And I think I was probably like from the 1800s when they wear the fluffy dresses and, paint little roses on teacups in the olden days. Like that's my era that I've always loved. Even when I was a little kid like you, I always wanted roses on everything. Like, I think our dolls had roses on them. I think even if we had Strawberry Shortcake, didn't she have little roses on her dresses? And all our little baby dolls, all my dolls had little roses on their outfits too, I think. I feel like that was just kind of the way things were designed back then. But when you were talking
like wallpaper.
Yeah, wallpaper, bedding. I had pink rose bedding. Like I had
I always had like rose quilts and things. True, totally. And
it was like everything had that. Now that you say that, and I totally forgot about that. I was like, I have my favorite bedding, and had this like white day bed. It was made of brass, those ones that were totally 90s that had those big rose bedspreads and stuff.
I'm thinking of all the drawings I've done and paintings, like even in my youth, it was always like I'd paint a giant rose and like put it on the wall and it was like a rose attunement. Now when I look back, like it was always like this amazing totem. And then seemed connected. It seemed connected to the angels, to Mother Mary, to the goddesses, to the flower fairies. It's almost like a very kind of healing feminine lineage for me, I think. And then at some point when I started making the flower essences, it was so fulfilling to work. I worked a lot with the pink rose. And for me, it was all about like inner child healing and like sweetness and like just all this like beautiful, gentle heart energy for like the empath or the gentle souls that needed that sweet energy. It's almost like a unicorn energy, which I felt like I always needed. Like the world is harsh and I want to like stay with the flowers and the fairies kind of, and so it would like heal and like connect you with that sweet sensitivity. So that was always my favorite rose. But I definitely feel the healing power of the red rose this year coming through more, and it's like a fiercer kind of feminine power energy. So it's interesting to feel the different personalities of the colors of roses and even the shapes of roses. And I remember watching this documentary about roses, and it was like they talk about floribunda and all the different ways they grow, how they grow in bunches, and sometimes they all grow at the same time, and sometimes like they'll grow different times. So like if you have a bunch of roses on a vine, they'll all be the same size at the same time, but then there's another type of rose where they'll grow at different times. So some will be budding and some will be large. And I thought that was like so interesting. And there's all these like mini roses and tea roses and giant roses, and it's like this huge thing for like rose gardeners. Like it's just a huge world of like roses.
Yeah, rose medicine. It was interesting because you and I both have the flower book where you can, it's called the Flower Workshop book to make flower bouquets. And I bought that book because it reminded me of being at my grandma's house. She has always had these big bouquets of roses, but she didn't go buy flowers. It was just picking from her garden. And even seeing pictures now of her like sitting in her kitchen, drinking tea with her little teacups, and having these big vases of flowers. And I just wanted to be able to recreate that as an adult. And I've been out gardening in our yard. My husband planted some rose bushes. Some have grown really well. Some haven't grown that well, but there's some that we have just this wild rose bush in the backyard, and it just blooms kind of like what you're saying, the floribunda, with lots of them growing at the same time. And the branches get so heavy that you have to trim them because they grow so heavy and small. Like the whole branch will be 30 roses, one little bunch. Yeah, but it looks like a wild rose. I don't even know what kind of roses those are, but it blooms all summer long. And so I try to save them, dry, make bouquets, and then I dry those flowers. And I had a metal tray out with parchment paper underneath it and just letting them dry. And then I left one of them outside. And then this morning I woke up and there's dried rose petals all over the back patio.
Oh, because if it's windy, that happened to me.
It got all windy because it was so hot out. And I was like, oh, I'll just let them dry outside instead of putting them in the dehydrator. And this morning it was like the whole back patio was covered in rose petals.
It was a rose blessing. It's good to talk about, all the ways to work with roses because, you can dry the petals. We can also, there's certain roses like the wild rose or the rugosa rose where you could make the rose water, like steep it and make the water.
Yeah.
Also, making flower essences or rose tea, just getting rose tea. And then some people like put it in oil. I know I've done that before too, like put the dried or the fresh petals in like an olive oil or almond oil and just let it infuse in there.
Yeah, I do those as well. It was interesting that I was out drying my rose petals because my mom sent me a picture of her drying wild roses from Alberta. I guess Alberta has that's their flower for the province. And so she had a big tray that she was drying of rose petals, and she does what I do. She takes all the little buds off and puts them separately. And I have a bowl outside of the little buds that I'm drying the buds separately because they look really sweet, the little rose buds. And I was like, oh, like mother, like daughter. And so I sent her a picture of like, here's my tray of drying roses. And it was just one of those family things that you're doing at kind of this season of the year, dry the flower petals and you can use them all year long. You can put them under your pillows. Did you always have those little flower sachets in your like drawers when you were a kid with like lavender and rose and things?
I think I had cedar more, but I always liked, like rose everything, rose soap.
Yeah.
But I do that now that I know about it. Like I'm always like getting all the rose petals and putting them in little satchels for like manifesting or healing or like on the altar. Like it's always my favorite. And I think it is because it's so high vibration. It's like just it just feels so good to me, the vibration of it.
Never heard of anyone speak about the vibrations of the roses like that. Just a couple of days ago, I was driving home from Portland and I was driving on a different area I don't normally drive. And all of a sudden there was this huge rose garden in the middle of like just a kind of average area of town. And I was talking to my husband on the phone. I was like, there's a huge rose garden. I just wanted to pull over and just stop and hang out there because I've never seen it before. But all of a sudden you just see hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of roses just at a park in the middle of the city that you didn't even know.
That's the Rose City. And like when I moved there, I really noticed I'm like, these are the most amazing roses that grow here. And they're like the size of my head. And I feel like I got a lot of rose healing living there. Like every year, like the roses, they bloom so prolifically and so huge. And everybody loves to grow roses and there's rose gardens everywhere. And it was really a lot of healing from that. And I think I created a lot of healing channels and art from that too, because I feel like I've done a few rose classes throughout the years, like the Rose Fairy Queen, things like that are kind of my favorite. It's almost my favorite energy working with those rose fairies, and the Rose Fairy Queens and stuff. But
and goddesses. Well, I was thinking about even when you walk around downtown Portland, anywhere, they have those drain or those sewer, those things that protect on the sidewalks or on the streets. What are those round circle metal things that go on the street? Those have a big, huge rose on them. I don't know if you ever saw.
I totally noticed that.
I don't know what those are called. Men know. But I remember seeing that and I'd be like, what is this? There's roses everywhere.
Like pothole covers or something.
Yeah, pothole cover. And they like crawl down there.
But I think because we're both artists maybe too, like I noticed the symbols and I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful rose symbol. And I always love it, like the logo of the rose. I noticed it. It feels like a good sign.
Yeah, it was really pretty. So yeah, we're just covered in roses here. And right now is the season. And we were talking about earlier, I was thinking about, it's like we're in the season of blooming, like this is a blooming season of the roses and the other flowers. So it's kind of like with our medicine is blooming as well. It's a real time of being out and blooming. Whereas like in the winter, it feels like our roots are being more dormant, you know, and they're kind of being quiet, and we kind of go inward and we're doing like more inner work. Right now, it's like we're out in person doing outer work, being outside, being in the warm sun. It just feels like a blooming season, like as far as, you know, being out doing ceremonies and being out with people and our friends. And yeah, it just feels like a different time.
Yeah, like a rebirth energy. And like the world is calling us because the world is blooming, right? The trees and the flowers are blooming. And it's like, get out and explore and, you know, see beautiful things. And so I also want to talk about the heart and the womb and just how the rose connects with the body for healing so deeply. I know, like, being in circles and working with the flower medicine, I always felt like the rose could merge with my aura and was very good for women, like in the heart and the womb, and like just the sensitive energy fields of women, that the rose seemed like a healer of women or the healer of the feminine energies.
I definitely feel that it brings a lot of, it works with on the layer of like forgiveness. And I feel like as gratitude as well. Recently, it's a lot has been coming up has been beauty and grace in the last like week or two has been the theme. And I feel like that's definitely what the rose gives you. It gives you beauty and it gives you grace. And it's also very short, the amount that it blooms and is like pretty, because it's gone. Like it starts to wrinkle around the edges of the flower, and then all of a sudden it's wilty and you can dry it. That's why I like to dry them. It's like savoring them, you know.
That's when we take beautiful pictures, or like I have like a fake rose crown. Like I'm just looking at it now too. So it's like thinking of all the ways we capture the rose, right? Through a fake flower, through a photograph, through painting, through art. Because it's just the shape and everything is, it touches the soul, right? It like uplifts our spiritual vibration.
Yeah, it definitely makes our heart like bloom, I feel like,
Mhm.
and heals. It definitely heals the heart. It's like if you feel ever sad, you can put like rose oil on your chest, like an essential oil. You know, if you're feeling upset, it really calms the nervous system and just kind of brings you back to center. At least for me, I actually always have rose oil close by.
I
Living
always love rose oil and rose water spray and the oils. Yeah, totally.
rose oil mixed with like a little bit of vanilla or a little bit of ylang ylang or something like that, a little like that sweetness and that feminine, like you were talking about earlier. It's like that women's circle space that you can just create at home by yourself, you know?
Yes, it's very sacred. Um, I also wanted to talk about, like, you know, shamanically or astrally, as someone who's a healer and journeys a lot, and I go to all the different realms, how I feel like I'm always traveling into rose gardens with like the fairies or the unicorns. Like I'm always drawn to the, or angels, like these rose gardens. Like it's always a symbol of these higher spiritual realms. Like it's like a castle with roses all around it, or a beautiful rose garden with a fountain. How it's always comes up in my journey when I'm going to my inner sanctuary. It's like, oh, it's an inner rose sanctuary. So it must be, I think, like when we talk about grace and receptivity, for getting healed, we can receive the rose, right? Like the rose can bring us into that state of receptivity and healing, because it calms and awakens the soul so that we can like journey and receive healing. I think that's why it comes up in those journeys, or we put it on an altar when we're doing healing work, right? Or, you know, even think of like we're talking about weddings and birthday parties, people put bouquets of roses because it just like sets a space, right? It adds to the space. Yeah.
And I feel like it holds a special power of healing too. Like almost like negativity can't come here with these roses holding space. Like it's a space holder, I feel like almost. These
Yeah.
roses, I feel like they have a lot of power. And you know, there is the thorny side to it. There's a lot of teachings about the thorns, you know, about
Yeah.
getting pricked by the thorns. There's lots of fairy tales about thorns. So it has its power and it also has its protection. So I feel like that those thorn protects it. So it's like almost like it probably protected us as children, having this like rose medicine around us. Kind of, I feel like we've had some auric, like you were talking about an aura healing, and I just feel like it's always been around me, always healing, always having like rose scented things and everything like you had. I can envision those like little square soaps and things with the red, with the foil and the little
like rose shaped things, like a rose shaped candle holder or a rose shaped soap. Or I was always like sketching roses, like I was fascinated by the shape of the petals. Now that I remember studying the shapes of the petals for like years, and I would just draw the same rose in my sketchbook, like the same rose again and again and again. And it's interesting to look at that. Like I think I was a teenager and you're just like I just liked the shape of it. And I would just kind of like sacred geometry. People continue to draw the flower of life. I would just continue to draw the rose again and again. And I often thought that was a premonition of like moving to the Rose City, because for years I drew roses and I moved there. I was like, is this what I was drawing? Because like there were so many roses like in the Portland area. Because they were just always in my consciousness. And that's always my dream to like have like lots of roses or a rose nursery, like always have roses around me wherever I am. Because I feel like they're like soul support, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it is like a grace. There's a grace that comes with when we are connected with that rose medicine. I feel like when I wear roses, when I like smell like rose, all of that really connects us to our feminine lineage and our gracefulness of ourselves, of who we truly are. I feel like
I have a lot of clothes too, like that with roses on them, like rose prints, or just like a t-shirt with one rose. Like I'll always look for that. And I think there's a lot of old legends of like the Society of the Blue Roses, like these groups of women and lineages that use that word, like the rose priestesses or the lineage of the blue rose. I mean, I think there's a lot of them that exist.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot are coming out
Yeah.
into the public. I feel like it was kind of hidden for many years, maybe centuries. I don't know how long, but I feel like a lot of this medicine is coming forward, and it's being honored, and it's being showcased as powerful. And I feel like it's a really beautiful time to be in this rose medicine and it's mystic rose.
Yeah.
The mystic rose realms.
Definitely feels good. And it feels good to just open that, even in our own journeying, like how we want to, if we see a rose, going deeper, like I have a bunch of red roses across the street too. And it's like going deeper into meeting that plant and feeling its medicine, or, getting a bunch of roses and having in your house and seeing what it feels like, or meditating with it. It's kind of, really fun to open that more consciously and listen to its messages. Like, what is the rose bringing to humanity? And it feels like mother healing too is coming when I asked it. Because I was like, what's the spirit of the rose want to tell humanity right now? If we ask that, like, what's it bringing? And it's like this mother healing, and this feminine healing for society, of like the gentleness, kindness, beauty, like when we slow down and pay attention to all that magic, we kind of unplug from society and then plug into that magic, right? Of like the spirit realm and the plant kingdom and like our own intuition, like just kind of slowing down and listening. And also what feels good for us, right? Like when we're kids, we naturally just do that. Like you pick that in a store, or you draw that, like you just like have no problem running towards what you love. And I think we need to like open that up again as adults. Like, oh yeah, I just naturally love that. Like without thinking, I want that around me, right? I want that rose wallpaper. And I'm always about the healing power of like personal style, right? Whether that's like your clothes, the wallpaper, the pillows, like having things around you that heal. And I think I'm someone as an artist that I heal through beauty. So it's like, it makes me feel whole to have that, the rose beauty around me.
I'm glad that you brought up journeying into roses, because doing shamanic work for 20 years, it was always journeying to spaces and and realms, but not really into physical objects until I went to Hawaii and doing some Hawaiian shamanic work there, some huna. And there was a teaching, and it was journeying into the plumeria flower, those white ones that I'm in love with. And that was the whole medicine and the teaching. And then I was like, you can journey into a flower. It was so mind blowing and shocking. And when I got home, obviously I went journeying through into the roses. I'm sure I've journeyed in earth paintings and different things, but just going deep inside that rose medicine and going exactly in there, what you have shared with us about what is it bringing to humanity? Like, what is the question for that rose today? So you can just like look at it, journey with it, hold it, drum with it, and ask it and really listen. It's really listening into that medicine of that rose.
And I think there's so many ways to do it, because it could just be an energy, or like you said, like a door. But for me also, it's like, what's the spirit there? Who's the diva of that rose? And why are they coming into my life at this time? Whether it's my garden or a place I visit or like in my neighborhood, what's their message? It's almost like a meet and greet where I'm like, oh, I want to meet this rose diva, or the kingdom that's there. Maybe it's a bunch of little rose fairies, or one big diva that's like giant, because usually she has a message. And I remember when I started getting more tuned to flower essences, the roses became very loud. They'd be like, I'm doing this, and make a potion for me, and I have this message. So they're emitting that psychic communication, everyone on some level. I mean, we're taking time to listen, so we're getting the message on a deeper level, but I think they're always emitting it to people. That's why people are like, I just feel good. Like I want a rose by my front door, or I want to go visit the garden. So I think they're always communicating on some level, but it's amazing to consciously communicate, and also go to their realms, because sometimes what I found with the flowers is that the seeds or the original ones come from different planets in their own realms, and it's really fun to trace back the lineage with the fairies and be like, where'd you guys come from? And usually they wanted to seed Earth or the planet. So they came from their planet and they wanted to spread their message. So they grow different places. And then you think, wow, there's so much going on behind the scenes. Like every time someone buys a rose or plants a rose, like, are they getting that message from the rose? Like they think it's their idea, but maybe they're co-creating with the flower kingdom,
Yeah, I love that. I know a lot of people that are deep into the rose circles here in the rose world, and in the gardening spaces, I would say, but I don't think that people go deep into the spaces that we're talking about today, about the energy of the rose, about the devas of the roses, about the fairies and the feminine energies of these roses. And I think that's where the magic is. Like especially when people are, cross-pollinating roses, making new roses. I don't think there's a lot of women even doing that. I think it's mostly like the master gardeners, or a lot of them are men, and who win these competitions. I'm sure there are some women too, but they have like flower judging competitions with the rose festivals where you can go to people's gardens and judge their flowers. But it's not, I feel like that's not the connecting that energy. I think the energy has to be merged in there in some way, woven in some way, to actually have that pollination, creation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you see those roses are really unique, they're like white with red stripes all over them. And you're like, oh, I've never seen a rose like that. And then you read about it and it's like two roses were merged together to create this brand new rose. And every year there's like brand new roses being birthed here. But then I think about that and I'm like, I feel like that's a bigger creation than just like putting two branches together and weaving those two gardening tools together. You know what I mean? I feel like there's has more to that.
It's interesting to think about, like, do they channel that and they're making something new, or it's like the endless humans expressing their creativity through the plant kingdom. And then it makes you think of like, if you did stuff like that you do it with a lot of like respect, right? Like talking to the plant, be like, what do you want to do? But it's kind of interesting because you think like, oh, it's kind of like they got married, and procreated like something new that mixes their DNA.
It is exactly what that is. And when we were talking earlier about the white roses, and you said that that was the priestess rose and the marriage rose. And then I remembered those white roses with those red, it looks like somebody painted on them, like a paintbrush. Have you seen those ones? They're very
Yeah.
rare. There's lots of different variables, especially when you go to like a rose garden and they have the little signs and you can read about them, or somebody who has created brand new roses. And it's like, oh, that is like a marriage of two roses, of a red.
That's really fascinating. And you know why else? Because I do connect a lot with the spirit of the roses, and most of them are feminine, but I've met male roses. And I had a white rose that was a male, and it was a grandfather. And it would tell me, I'm grandfather Rose. And it had a white energy, like a wisdom, but it was also like grumpy. It didn't want other plants near it. And because I would practice that, like being like, okay, what's the spirit of this rose? And you can't make it up. Like it kind of just comes to you. And that was a male. And I think I gave my friend that roses. That rose is still like thriving somewhere, but it was so masculine. And it was like the only kind of male rose I ever met. And so that's kind of interesting too, to think of like, oh, what, is it a male or female energy, the roses? And what's their message? Because it had a very distinct personality. Like it wanted its space, it wanted to do its thing. And that's something that's fun to do too, is like once you kind of tune to the fairies and the divas of the roses, to like click into their personality and their messages, because some are playful, some are wise, some are like really holy, like priestess energy, some are just real playful, childlike. Like they all have different personalities, I've noticed. It's kind of fun to practice listening to that. And I love that grandfather rose, like forever. It was like a member of the family. And I would make rose water from that. It was a white rugosa rose, and that I had for years. But I never gave a name. I just called it grandfather rose.
I love
But
that.
maybe that's something I gotta do now. Maybe we gotta name our roses. Like, I mean, because I don't think I even spend this much time talking to them and listening to them. So it's kind of a good reminder today to do that.
Yeah.
And also be like, how much do we want to work with the roses, and how?
Yeah, that makes me think about some of the rose bushes we have right now blooming. Some are blooming really well, some aren't blooming at all, some have already bloomed. Some we planted years ago in my meditation garden that doesn't get a lot of sun. They just never really bloomed at all. But every once in a while, I get one or two big, huge, dark burgundy red roses, and I get obsessed with them because I'm like, this one barely does anything. But then when one comes up, I'm like, oh, look at these beautiful roses. It's a big deal because it doesn't bloom a lot.
Like
But
won the lottery, yeah. All of a sudden, it just because
yeah,
come out of nowhere, it's like a little bud, and then the color comes out. I mean, they always fascinate me like that. Because even this year, I got my rose vine because they don't really survive the winter here because it's very cold. So I usually get a new rose, and I was just watching it, and I went through this almost turmoil of like, what if it doesn't grow? What if it doesn't bloom? And I was like, it's kind of like the lessons of gardening. Like, is this faith that like you water it, it'll bloom, hopefully. And it's really doing amazing now. It's shot up like 5 foot. It has a big bud, but I feel so grateful because it was kind of like nothing could happen or everything could happen with that rose, and it really is performing, and I'm grateful. I'm excited to take pictures of that and show everybody, hopefully in a few weeks, because it already has the bud, and it's like I got a real nice red velvet rose this year, and I'm always so grateful for the roses in the garden every summer.
yeah, grateful. Gratitude, grace for these roses. And I feel like it's a very big part of what
Yeah.
teachings are for us,
They're
right?
blessing our garden, our yard, and our life, and like they're such gifts and of beauty. But so let's start to wrap up. We hope that everybody is enjoying connecting with mystic roses in their life, and we encourage you to connect with the healing power of the roses. And we look forward to doing some more podcasts and connecting with everybody. You can find us at mystictemple.co. You can also follow us on Facebook, Mystic Temple Wisdom. And we have a collection of classes connecting with angels, fairies, goddesses, our inner medicine women. We have lots of fun stuff on our website, and you can join our newsletter. And we're continuing to be committed to divine feminine healing teachings, journeying, shamanism, angel healing, and much, much more. I'm here with Joanna from Heart Mountain Medicine. Joanna, do you want to talk about what you offer and your website and business also?
Sure. Yeah, so I have Heart Mountain Medicine and Heart Mountain Wellness, and Heart Mountain Organic. So Heart Mountain Wellness is where I do my shamanic work and goddess work, as well as death doula work. I do a lot of different healing energetic medicine over the last 20 years, working with a lot of trauma, original wounds, healing on lots of different layers and pathways, depending on what, in a lot of lineages, mostly in the Peruvian lineage, but in quite a few different lineages as well. I love doing ceremonies. I'm a ceremonialist, so you'll probably find me doing a ceremony somewhere in the forest or in a group or a fire, especially now that it's summertime. And then Andrea has her angel fairy healing as well. So we each have our own companies, and then we came together to create Mystic Temple. Do you want to share about angel fairy healing?
Yeah, my business is angel fairy healing, and I do lots of channeling of the angels, fairies, unicorns. I also offer private sessions. I love to work with people to do deep soul healing and, awaken their life purpose and navigate their life with those higher, beautiful tools. I'm very dedicated to spiritual healing as a psychic, as a healer for many years, like Joanna. We just love to seek, right? We want to do karmic healing, spiritual healing, just bring in that amazing healing power that's available to us. And so we're excited to connect with everybody and inspire everyone to also get on their own healing path and connect with the beautiful healing all around us, like the healing power of the mystic rose. That's just kind of might be right up the street from you or in your own garden, like the beautiful healing that's all around us. And so we will see you next time on the Mystic Temple podcast. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel. We will see all of you guys soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.